Views expressed by Camaplan podcast guests may not reflect those of Camaplan. Camaplan does not guarantee the accuracy of information provided by guests, nor does it endorse or recommend any individual or organization. Camaplan is not an investment advisor, CPA, realtor, or attorney. You are encouraged to conduct your own due diligence before making investment choices. For any tax, legal, accounting, investment, or other questions, please consult a specialist. Hi, I'm Michael Duncan, and welcome back to The Road to Financial Freedom. This podcast is brought to you by Camaplan, a self-directed IRA administrator focused on educating investors on how to grow retirement savings faster through alternative investments. In each episode, we're going to take an in-depth look at the many roads taken to financial freedom and how they differ for each of our guests. Our goal is to help the listeners learn how they can achieve their own financial freedom through the experience and stories of experts that have done just that. Today's guest is the founder and CEO of Baucom Capital. Baucom Capital is a boutique firm for high net worth and high income individuals that specializes in a seldomly invested but well-known property type that performs better than most others. Having started his journey in private markets back in 2012, he has been successfully involved with over $55 million in AUM through acquisition, development, repositioning, disposition, asset management, and strategic planning. I am very excited to welcome Travis Baucom to the stage today. Travis, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Michael. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, yeah. I'm really excited to, I feel like this is a little bit of showmanship, but I'm excited to hear about that boutique, the well-known property type that performs better than most others. Obviously, I know what it is, but our listeners don't. Well, they might by the title, actually.
Sure.
But regardless, excited to have you on. And I would love to just kind of start by asking you, what are you involved in right now? What is that well-known property type?
Yeah. So about 3 years ago, we made a switch to just investing in commercial real estate, primarily self-storage facilities. We do have, 5% of our portfolios, other things like triple net industrial or, a few strategically placed single family homes, even though I don't think single family homes are good investments. But yeah, primarily it's storage facilities. We buy existing storage facilities, we reposition them, sometimes we expand them, and then we're currently working on our first ground up storage facility that is a piece of grass right now, but we're about to make it a 111,000 net rentable square foot facility. So
storage, it makes a lot of sense that it is very well known and it is a very consistent type of, there's like they always exist. I never tend to see them go out of business because people always have a use for them. I've used them plenty of times, moving in and out of college, all that kind of stuff. What made you get into that? You said it was just 3 years ago. So what kind of prompted that switch?
Yeah, back in 2012, I actually bought I committed to, I'm like, hey, I'm not going to, I'd recently gotten let go of a job as a lot of people had back then. I was like, I'm just going to commit to doing this real estate investing thing that I've read all these books on. So, in college, I'd read like 53 books on real estate investing, but never really pulled the trigger. So in 2012, I finally pulled the trigger and bought my first house, rented it out before the mortgage payment was due, which is good because I didn't really have the cash to pay the mortgage payment once the down payment and that sort of thing took place. And so renting it out before the mortgage payment was done. And I was like, man, I'm making like $300. All I have to do is like another 10 of these. That's $3,000. And at the time, like, I think my expenses were $4,000. Back then we had no kids, a small house. I was like, I can be free. I can like literally be free in a matter of once I find another 9 houses. And so hard thing is it didn't go that smoothly. We did start buying houses. Things started going really well. We started flipping houses. We ended up having a very big operation. Around 2016, we figured out how to get people to call us directly on houses like that they needed to sell, facing foreclosure, divorce, bankruptcy, etc. And we were buying 5 to 10 houses a month. And we had a big office and kind of did that for a while. Things are great. Things are going well, really good. In 2018, we bought too many houses and kind of tied up all of the cash I had. And so around that time, I was also burned out. I had some some health problems too. And so I was like, man, I'm just going to close this thing down. Like my operator called me one day and he was like, hey, we need 150 grand to make it for the next 6 weeks. I was like, man, hey, we have 42 houses in inventory. Like, why can't we just sell one of those and get the 150 grand? He goes, well, they're not ready. And so we had a major disposition issue. We could buy them. We couldn't get crews to fix them up fast enough or on budget. And then we couldn't sell them fast enough or rent them out fast enough. So we were having some major issues there. I got tight on cash. And I was like, there's got to be an easier way to make money and to generate wealth. And because the house takes 58 to 110 decisions before you even put a for rent or a for sale sign out. And I was decision fatigue with all those houses. Like we had 42 renovations going, 72 rental properties, all single family. And I was like, I'm getting out of this. And so I started a 28-month process of unwinding everything I got myself into. Thankfully, we had really good equity. We were buying right. We weren't able to get rid of the properties. So we were buying right. So it's more of like, all right, I'll do these 5. When those 5 are done, I'll list those. And then I'll start the next 5. I had 5 sets of crews. We had a very regimented schedule. And after 28 months, which got stymied by the pandemic, after 28 months, we were done. We were free. And so about halfway into it, I realized I was going to have a little bit of money to put into some other stuff and I could restart. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was looking at short-term rentals because I was making the few we had 11 of them. We were cranking it out, making really good money that way. And I'll just do more of those. And then the pandemic hit and we lost all that revenue. Like no one was traveling.
Yeah.
$81,000 of a monthly revenue, just, of which that was like 20 grand for us as a family to live on. And, it was just gone. It was horrible. I remember sitting in my back porch at that time I was like, well, I've got to enjoy this back porch because I'm probably going to lose it because I don't have any money to pay for my mortgage. But I was sitting back there and I was like, I got to find a different way. And I remember a buddy presenting on storage at a mastermind event I was at. So I called him and I had I think we had like an hour and a half long conversation. And then a few other people connected me with a few other people. And then I'm like, this seems like something simple enough that I would keep from getting burned out. It seems like all of them work. Like the historic default rate is less than 1%. It's 96 basis points. So you can't take 100. So 100 storage facilities. There's still not a foreclosure there. You have to do 101 to get that foreclosure. And to juxtapose that with multifamily, it's like 100 facilities. There's 14 foreclosures, and it just goes up depending on the asset class. It goes way up higher. Like I think all malls are in special servicing right now, and stuff like that. And so I was like, I think this has some legs. I also really like that, as previously mentioned, I said I read 53 books on how to flip houses and how to rent single family homes out. Well, like I got on Amazon to see how many books there was. There was 3 at the time. And I was like, nobody likes this. It's boring. No, it's not flashy. It's a bunch of ugly metal buildings, but it looks like it makes money. My buddies say that it cranks out money. One of the buddies I was talking to had a plane or had a jet. So I'm like, man, he does really well. And so I was like, this is what I'm going to focus on. This is where I'm going to go. And then so at that time I started calling brokers to see like, hey, like I see this this facility got listed here. Like, can you help me understand how I should be underwriting it? And a lot of those conversations didn't go well. Actually, it was like they were annoyed that I was calling them. And I was even saying like, hey, I just sold over 100 properties. I'm looking to put that into storage. Can you help me? Like, this just seems like it's a little overpriced. Like, I know it's probably not overpriced. Can you help me here? And none of them would really like it took a while for someone to finally be like, yeah, I'll sit down and like walk you through it. It's like a good broker.
Yeah.
And so we did that for about 8-9 months. And I finally, because I'd sold so many things, I knew I was going to have a huge tax bill. And I was like, I have to buy something before the end of the year. And so this broker was like, hey, this is a good deal. It's all the storage facilities in this one little town in Texas. He won't sign an agreement. He won't pay a commission. So I'll just let you go directly with them. It's probably a good deal. I'm like, okay, well, and so I underwrote that. I think I underwrote that thing for a long time, to the point where like the guy, John, that was selling it to me, he was like, "Hey man, you gonna do this or not?" And so I was like, yeah, I'm just so think on December 30th, we closed on that one. And
Wow.
I had, because I had to do I can do the
Yeah.
cost segregation the next year to cover that year, like because I had to like April, or if I extended it all the way to October, but I had to close that year. And so thankfully I did,
Yeah.
and it saved me $127,000 in taxes. And so I was like, this is good. And I was blessed with like a really good manager. And so I was like, I think I can grow this here. And so that's basically the start of it. And that's all we're doing now, because it's a lot easier than house flipping, and it's a lot, man, I forget that sometimes. I'm like, oh, I was supposed to call my manager today. I forgot, and then when I do call her, it's like there's nothing wrong. She's like, oh yeah, this happened and this happened, and then she starts talking about her grandkids. It's like
Yeah.
there's nothing else to talk about. And so uh so yeah, it's a great business. I love it. We're planning. We have a lot of big dreams, a lot of big vision for it. And so yeah, that's the long story version of it.
I mean, first of all, yeah, I can't imagine. I'm sure there are some fun stories, but I can't imagine it being anywhere nearly as eventful as, 100 houses or whatever it was. Like, I mean, just like I imagine 100 storage units is probably less eventful than one house, and the things that go on there, and the things that you have to decide on, and the things you have to, the problems you have to deal with. So I can only imagine how much more, maybe relaxing is the wrong word, but less stress is put on you.
Definitely less stressful. I was talking to a buddy yesterday, and I was like, it's the maintenance, right? People cause maintenance. When people live somewhere, they're the ones that are actually creating
Yeah.
the chaos. Naturally humans just create chaos. Just, Earth is barren. We started doing stuff. Now we have huge skyscrapers that's causing a lot of ecosystem issues. Humans cause chaos. And so we don't house humans. We house their crap and their cars and their washing machines and their mattresses and that sort of thing, and their old tax files and that sort of thing. And so and they're not there most of the time. They come once a month, if at all,
Yeah.
sometimes maybe once a year. And so it's really literally just buildings, concrete, and the person that's there the most is the facility manager. And so yeah, that's a lot less man, it's a lot less stressful than houses. Houses that has so many, like I said, there's 110 things that can break in a house, and
Yeah.
decisions you have to make on to build a house. And another thing is, like, with a house is, let's say you pay 250 for a house. Well, if the house to the right of it sells for 350, then your house is worth like 350. But if it sells for 300, it's worth, your house is worth 300.
Yeah.
Whereas a storage facility, you can have a storage facility that's performing really well and making a lot of money, and that thing's worth millions, multiple millions more than the storage facility down the block, because down the block isn't ran well. That they don't use software to maximize revenue, that sort of thing. And so you can add millions of dollars worth of value fairly quick, without much work. Like the facilities I was telling you about, the five we're talking about, we bought a portfolio of 5 in a small town of Texas. It was the only ones there. I'm like, well, it's the only facilities here, so that means we can go up. So in 1 year, we went from $40 to $67, and we didn't lose that many tenants. Like, I think we lost maybe 10%. And so, but the bottom line, 396 units that are making another $20 each. That's $80,000 to $90,000 of revenue more than when I bought it. And that was just from pressing a button on a piece of software that we used. And so,
And it must feel good to have more just general control over the value of that. Because, I mean, like you said, like the cost of a house, the value of the house rather, can be completely dependent on things that you have little to no control over, being the
mhm,
houses next door, the houses down the block. And this, you're right, like it is simply decisions that you're making have a much more direct impact on how much money you make, which
exactly.
feels bizarre to say, but that's probably a good thing.
Well, yeah, and the whole point of investing is trying to predict and match your yield. So you're looking at a spreadsheet and go, okay, in 2 years this thing will be worth 4 million. How do I, I need to make that happen.
Yeah.
That's my goal. So let's do that. And then if you hit your goal, you make $2 million because you paid $2 million for that facility, and it's now worth 4 million. and whereas a house, like, man, I could put the nicest quartz in this sucker and it's not going to be nice. It might go for another 10 grand. I might get my money out of the quartz, but there's
Yeah.
not. And that's all commercial real estate. I think with storage though, you can predict project your yield a lot easier and predict it, because maintenance is like, you have a whole bunch of non-variables that you have to deal with. So variables are like maintenance, utilities, um, it, you know, I guess insurance, but insurance is pretty much fixed for 12 months. So, but maintenance of utilities, you don't have, like, people aren't leaving their lights on, right? And
Yeah.
we have LED lights, and they're the brightest ones. They show up really bright. And so, like, you can really minimize the variability of utilities. And then with maintenance, there's just no maintenance. Like, occasionally we have a door that gets stuck, and so we have to spend $280 to go and put a new spring in that sucker, and then it's good for the next 25 years.
Yeah.
The spring has a 25-year warranty. So, it's like,
You're not even exaggerating.
Yeah, not exaggerating. That's the manufacturer has, like, if you do it with their guy, that sort of thing. So if you use their licensed installer, I don't do this, the manager does, but if you use their licensed installer, it's a really long warranty. And so we'll never, if it breaks again, we can just call them and they'll fix it with a service call, basically. And that's pretty much it. You don't have plumbing, you don't have carpet you have to replace every time someone moves out. You literally just sweep it out. And so I remember, like, we had a lot of single family homes in a military market, and like they would get PCS'd out, so permanent change of station out.
Yeah.
And we were just thankful that they served our country and that sort of thing. But like 9 months, 6 months into it, and they typically had dogs or whatever, like, you're ripping that carpet out. That's brand new carpet. And so there's another $1,500 that you weren't planning on spending. You're only making $300. So there's 5 months worth of cash flow going out the door, just because someone has to go move to a different, fort, or maybe go overseas and serve our country. And so we never made money on the houses. It's crazy. Like, we just, every time we would always have to fix stuff. We always paint stuff, and it was not cheap. And we don't like that. I think, man, I don't know. I haven't been, there's not anything in the storage industry that's been like, oh, this is a huge failure on my part. It really, there's no maintenance. There's no issues. It's just, it's not like a cakewalk, but it's definitely a lot easier compared to every other asset class, that I've invested in, which is houses, multifamily, office, private schools, that sort of thing. It's so much easier to deal with. Pretty much anytime plumbing or electrical or toilets are involved, or carpet, things start getting pretty pricey.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can imagine. I mean, just being in one house, let alone hundreds. But so once you first invested in this small town in Texas, in these those 5 places, how fast did you see your acquisitions grow, and how fast did you turn this into a much bigger development?
Yeah, I think it was about 6 weeks in.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, I think I'm gonna be okay. Like people paid last month, people are paying this month. And let's raise rents to see. And we raised rents the first time, it was 20%. So like an average of $4 a unit. And we had a few people get really upset at us, say that the new owner is out of state, new owner is greedy, for $4 a unit, which is obviously silly. And but we went from 96% occupancy to 92% occupancy. And general rule in self-storage is stabilized values or stabilized occupancy is 85 to 90%, right? So if you're above 90, you got to raise rents. If it's below 90 or below 85, like 85, 90, we're kind of we're good. But below 85, we're like, well, we got to market more to get some people into this thing so we can get back to that 90. When we did that to 20%, like, and we just went down to 92%, I was like, oh, wow. Okay, so cool. No one left. This is actually, the model is working. This is great. We're going to raise rents again in July and again in September. I hit it for my manager and she had it on her calendar. And so like shortly after that, I got really excited about it. And we went up and bought a facility, or we got a facility in July. So that was in December and July. We bought a facility in Edmond, Oklahoma. And then, same thing. We doubled rents, people moved out, but our revenue went way up, way higher. Like we went from 100%, and that one we went from 100% occupancy and 30,000 in revenue to 65% occupancy, because a lot of people get upset at us, and $42,000 of revenue. So like, even though we lost occupancy, we increased our revenue quite a bit. And I was like, dude, like all we have to do is market now.
Yeah.
Market, get some funnels going, get the phone ringing. And if once we get up to 80%, 90%, we'll have like 11, like we paid $6 million for that facility. Based off the same cap rate, we'll have it a $10.5 to $11 million facility. And all we did is raise rates, and we hadn't done anything to the facility. And so with that one, unfortunately, 2 weeks ago, half of it, there was a lot of fires in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
30% of it burned down. So we got some issues on that one, but it's still, like thankfully we have good insurance. We'll rebuild a better facility. But yeah, and that's the biggest issue I've had so far, is that a grass fire that started in the panhandle of Texas slowly moved to Oklahoma City somehow, which is 5 hours away.
Beats me.
Yeah, unreal. But yeah, and even that, like the tenants had insurance, so they get covered, and everyone just kind of win on it, I think, except the insurance company. But
oh yeah,
but yeah, it's I'd much rather have that as an issue as opposed to, so like, when one of our apartments, we had a gentleman who worked at night. He came home, started frying up some wings, forgot about the wings. We were thinking,
how do you forget about wings?
I think he may have hit a doobie or something like that.
Fair enough.
And then the wings, after they got to like 600 degrees, where they caught on fire, the oil and everything, so he throws a dry towel on it because he's tired and stoned. And then that catches on fire, hits a cabinet, burns all the cabinets. By that point, he got the extinguisher that's out on the thing, at least, and took that out. But it was $7,500.
Yeah.
And so I'd much rather have an issue like the one I've had with Edmond, Oklahoma, because then like I have a duty to put that guy in a hotel room or let him out of his lease. And so he burned my house or burned my unit down. Here's a hotel for a month or two. So
that's a pretty good deal. I mean,
yeah. Well, yeah. Well,
you never got the wings though, which
they burned the wings.
It's a shame.
Breakfast wings.
It's a shame. But something else that you had mentioned about self-storage in general, and especially in comparison to, these houses and, kind of what we went through a long time ago and, what we're starting to go through again. But that's the fact that they're recession proof. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. When you look at the data from the savings and loan crisis, which happened in 1991 or 1989 to 91, then to the .com crisis / 9/11, 01, and then 2008, and even 2020, which was the COVID recession, which was only 2 months. But I think that was not really a recession because they flooded cash so quickly that you don't know what was performing, what was not performing. But the last 3 major recessions where there wasn't some major, influx of cash from the federal government, storage performed better than any other asset class. And if you take the last 28 years, according to the National Association of Real Estate Investing Trusts, or Real Estate Investment Trusts, so REITs, their data shows that storage performed at an 18.83% return annually, and that was way higher than all the other asset classes. So it's the lowest default rate in a recession, and it's the highest return over an almost 30-year lifespan, or 30-year timeline.
So it's got both the floor and the ceiling.
Yeah, so it really is the best. I think in 2008 and 9, that default rate went above 1. Like I was telling earlier, it was 96 basis points. I think it went above 1. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, I mean, I have 3 years of buying storage facilities. I have yet to see one that's in default, that like, this is a real estate owned storage facility. I've not seen any of those. They tend to all eventually work out. I'm sure if you run out of cash before it's stabilized, it might not work out, but someone else is going to buy it, and and it eventually works. So obviously everything taken with a grain of salt, because we can't promise that you won't have wings that you forget about and you're cooking them in your storage facility for all we know. Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Personally, I'd never forget about my wings, but that's just me. But so a question I really like to ask people when they come on the podcast is, and maybe you don't necessarily have one for the storage, but what is a a mistake that you've made along the way during this process that you believed you learned a lot from, and you were able to use those lessons in the future to avoid the same mistakes and hopefully help things turn out for the better?
Yeah, I would say I was too aggressive on executing on the data I knew. And what I mean by that is, you know, we, like, I've told you the stories, like where we raise rents.
Yeah.
Your tenants still are tenants, right? And so if you raise rents in Q1 and Q2, Q3, Q4, they're all going to hate you. It's just as easy to double the rents in Q2 and be like, sorry, inflation, and not worry about 1, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
And because with Coleman, the city that we have all the units, all the facilities in, we were really aggressive on that. But at the same time, like, all we got, like, it just is, I just remember this old man sent me a letter, and that letter affected me because I was like, all right, if the old man is sending me a letter, he's pretty upset. And it's a real small market, but so we haven't raised rents at Coleman since that letter, and I'm not planning on it anytime soon. We've actually
Shout out
come
to the
down
old man.
Yeah, good job, old man. Took one for the team. And then, you know, the Red Bluff, the one that is up in Oklahoma, when we doubled rates, we lost a lot of tenants. I think if we would have, instead of going from $4.77 to $8, if we would have done like $5.77 or $6, and then like 6 months later do $7, you know, just slowly trail it down, we could have maintained our occupancy. That would have ultimately created more cash flow. Because filling these suckers up is the hardest part, right? Once you got to spend a lot of money in marketing. You're like, was it really worth it? That sort of thing. But the truth is, who knows? We could have gone up to 577 from 477 and lost 40%. You know, like people are going to get pissed and upset, regardless. And so, like, I think that facility specifically, and this is a good for real estate investors looking or listening to this, like, buying the facility that's the cheapest in town is a good idea. So because you can raise rents, but at the same time, and the gentleman that we bought it from, it was definitely the cheapest in town.
Yeah.
And, you know, and so repositioning that is where a lot of that value comes from. But because it was the cheapest in town, we had a lot of cheapskates really upset at us. I think we got 41 1-star reviews on Google My Business. So we had to like go in there and like complain and say, hey, this is actually not legit. And then we had to get our, you know, other people who were tenants and potentially not tenants, like giving us 5 stars so we can get it up. That's pretty brutal. And so, but that was all because we were really aggressive on we looked at the data. We know the market's $8. So let's go ahead and just knock it up to $8 instead of like slowly trickle it. You know, 20% here, 20% there. And within 2 years, now we're at $8 a foot or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that's always easier to stomach as someone that would be running those places out. I mean, like I said, I've rented before, and, you know, maybe I will again, who knows? But whenever there is that large jump, and this is true for anything, it's much more noticeable. Mm-hmm. It's like when you go to your favorite restaurant and they just printed out a new menu and everything is like $5 more expensive, like you notice that. But if everything's $1 more expensive, you're less likely to notice. And if you notice, you don't necessarily care. Like, it's kind of like the whole idea that I feel like everyone learns in middle school. The reason they price everything at $4.99 is because $4.99 feels better than $5 when you're buying it. Like, it's a marketing tactic.
Right.
So I think it makes perfect sense that, you know, that slow creep up, while it has the same effect, it's not going to have the same effect. It has the same effect for you. It doesn't have the same effect on the people that are buying, the tenants, because it is just a mental thing. If a new guy comes into town and they double your prices or whatever, like, I mean, I'd be pissed. I don't even know. Like, I could sit here and like look at every other price. It's still less expensive than every other price. I'm still going to complain because you doubled it. Mm-hmm. That's just like being human a lot of the time. And obviously
hindsight, we should have been a little bit more careful, but yeah. And the thing is, we would have had the same outcome. It would have just taken a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I told you that's good to understand from the consumer side.
Yeah. And I think that is a perfect example of like those were the first 2 facilities that you bought. And I'm assuming that since then you've approached that differently.
Yeah. The last 2 we bought, we're just gonna be a little bit more careful.
Yeah. Shout out to
Let's
the
just
old man. He
let's
really,
get let's get them used to us, the new people.
yes,
So
yes,
yeah, we bought one in November, and April was the first increase in rates. And it was like the outdoor parking was like $25. You're like, you got to be
yeah,
kidding me. We're going to charge you more. We're going to triple this, and across the
yeah,
street's getting 70. We're going to charge you 65,
yeah.
and then the units, I think we went up 10 or $15. And see, by being a little bit more gentle that way, we actually lost 5 tenants as opposed to, you know, 90. So
Big
it
difference.
definitely is working. So yeah, and I think that's all entrepreneurship is like you're trying things, you're having to eat crow, and then
Yeah.
like you run really hard at a brick wall, and then after you hit the brick wall and it hurts, you're like, was there did you say there was a door that can go in? You said there's a door, right? I think you said there's a door.
I love that. I also love the mental image.
Right.
It's very like 90s cartoon. I can picture it very, very easily. So I love that. Thank you for that. I'm absolutely gonna steal that sometime. Um, but finally, before I let you tell the listeners kind of where they can find you, how to get in contact with you, all that kind of stuff. My final question, as always, as you know, this is the Road to Financial Freedom podcast, and I would just like to ask you, what does financial freedom mean to you?
The ability to do things when you want and how you want without worrying about the financial side of it.
And is that a goal for you with everything that you've been doing?
Yeah, as a joke, so like in high school, I structured my senior year where I was off. I get out of school at 1, and
Love
I'd
it.
come home and I'd play video games and I'd play guitar, try to learn all the Led Zeppelin songs and Metallica songs I could. And that I would do that till like 10:30. That's all I did. Wasn't interested in girls back then. Just want to play video games and play guitar. And a little bit of me, I remember when I graduated college and my first job as a cube farm, working for Countrywide Home Loans in a cube farm. And it was a great experience because they had great sales training and there was a lot of great people there. But I was in a cube farm and I literally had to like log into my phone and they could see me. And if I wasn't talking, it was horrid.
Yeah.
I just remember like being really sad one day, and a friend, a buddy's wife was like, "Hey, are you okay?" And I was like, "I'm just kind of missing like the free time that I
Yeah.
used to have, that I had in high school, that I had in college, and now I'm just like stuck from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. getting yelled at by Northeastern people, getting foreclosed on because it was 2008 when when I had
Yeah.
that job, and they weren't kind up there, and so like for me, I've always been trying to get to a point where like it's not really about the money. It's not buying like a jet or having a $400,000 sports car. It's about like I want to go mountain biking on Mondays. I want to go mountain biking on Fridays. And sometimes if I want to, I want to go mountain biking on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And that's essentially how I see it, as like there's enough money in the bank that if I take today off, or if I just, sometimes I have 4 kids, wife, lots of responsibility with nonprofits and businesses. Like sometimes I'm like, today is going to be a day I drop the kids off. I go back, I cook breakfast, and I watch Sports Center until 11 a.m. And then I'll come
Yeah.
into the office. That's essentially what that means for me, is I want the freedom to be like, hey, I can, Austin's only an hour and a half. They have a lot better sushi than where I live. I can have lunch with a buddy in Austin just to get sushi, then drive right back. That, like, freedom for me is that type of thing, more like action items, not like, oh, cool, I've accumulated a lot of cool stuff and live in a 6,000 square foot house when I could be totally happy in a 3,200 square foot house. But like what I've learned is the more material possessions you have, it's just more responsibility. And and responsibility for me just had stress, because there's so much responsibility of having that responsibility. Like when people give me money to invest in it, that's a huge responsibility. And I want to put all my energy into that, and then all my energy into the stuff that by doing those really high profit executing items, like I can go and just mountain bike for a couple of days. And so, yeah, I'm not like, we live in a modest house compared to what we could live in. We drive 2 paid off cars, and I just bought a Jeep, paid cash for a Jeep because I've always wanted a Jeep. So yeah, I would say I'm kind of feel like I'm going all over the place here, but ultimately financial freedom for me is the ability to not have to answer to anybody and to not have to be stuck in a seat if I don't want to be, unless
I
I
think,
choose to be.
I think that's very well said. I couldn't
Thanks,
agree
man.
more with everything you said, and I think you displayed that very, very well. So thank you for that answer. And finally, yeah, can you just tell the listeners about yourself? Feel free to plug yourself. Obviously, I'll put your information in the description of this episode, but feel free to plug yourself.
Yeah. Thanks so much. So, if you want to reach out to me and chat about self-storage or financial freedom, I'd recommend one of the three places. So Instagram at Travis_Baucom. That's spelled B as in boy, AUCOM. If you want to learn how to buy storage facilities and partner with me on storage facilities in more of an active role, housetoempire.com. And then from a passive income standpoint, if you just want to invest and get a cash flow, get a distribution quarterly, and take participate in equity distributions, that sort of thing, go to investinstoragedeals.com.
Awesome. Well, Travis, I had a wonderful time talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and hopefully we have the chance to talk again soon. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Sounds good.
And as always, thanks for listening to The Road to Financial Freedom. If you enjoyed this show, please support the podcast by remembering to rate, review, and subscribe. You can keep up to date with us on Facebook or Instagram at Road to Financial Freedom Podcast. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. If you like what you're hearing on The Road to Financial Freedom and want to learn more about self-directed IRAs and 401ks, click the link in the description to download a free toolkit with everything you need to get started.